Hi there, I'm the Reverend Danny Crosby, a Unitarian minister serving congregations in Altrincham and in Urmston in the northwest of England. And I offer this devotion as a balm for the heart, for the mind, for the spirit, and for the soul, and especially for this Advent Sunday. It's titled, Hope Keeps Me Alive and Creatively Engaged with the World. Something's happened to me that I don't really like. I am now considered a senior minister, it seems. This is not something that I warmed up, which is, of course, pure vanity, by the way. Senior sounds old, and my ego wants to protest against this. The truth is, though, that I am now a senior minister. I've been doing the job for quite some time. And I have in the last year become more engaged in helping, been invited to be engaged in helping to develop future ministers, people into this incredible and challenging role. I spent a few days away recently with the Ministry in the Making team, and it was a very productive time as we began to shape up next year's programme. There were many wonderful, wonderful conversations, including a rather beautiful one when Helen Mason, who is the director of Unitarian College, shared something from a sermon that her paternal grandfather, the great minister Reverend Leonard Mason, who actually was performed the wedding of one of the weddings, should I say, of Richard Burton and Elizabeth Taylor many, many years ago. Now, Helen is from a long lineage of Unitarian luminaries, including Reverend John Raleigh Beard, one of the co-founders of Unitarian College in Manchester. John Raleigh Beard is buried in Brooklyn Cemetery in Sale, which kind of lies between the two congregations I serve in Altrincham and Urmston. Raleigh Beard is a distant relative of her late mother, Joy Winder, and Joy was a wonderful human being who helped shape my own journey into ministry, actually. Someone I am grateful for, one of the many people that helped me along the way. And I'm passing that on, I guess, now that I'm a senior minister, so to speak. Anyway, sorry, I'm digressing a little. But the sermon by Leonard Mason, which is the point of this, by the way, in it, what Helen was saying was that he described God as being like a white-tailed deer. Now, I didn't know this, but I have since learned, as I looked into this, because it kind of caught my attention, that the white-tailed deer raises its tail when it detects danger. And as it does, the underside of the tail, which is white, rises up as the tail and it reveals the white-tailed aspect and becomes visible. And it's this that I think was being used as a metaphor for God. And the suggestion being that you get a glimpse of this from time to time, and it's this glimpse that draws us on, that God is still with us, if you like. And he spoke powerfully to me, and my own understanding, as limited as it is, of God and how I experience God in my own life. It's not so much that God, in my experience, controls everything, but more that God is present, always luring me on, drawing me out of myself. It's this light of hope which at times may go quite dim and yet burns so bright in the darkest of times, what you might call burns so bright during the night. It reminded me of the humble words of that classic Waterboy song, actually, The Whole of the Moon. I saw the crescent, you saw the whole of the moon. You know the one, don't you? And I was thinking of this as I and a friend discussed the beautiful crescent moon that was there very early on a cold, wet Tuesday morning this week. You know, it's this sometimes dim light that brings me hope when hope is hard to find. My rose in the winter time. The theology adequate for the night. Here's the words. Not God as unmoved mover, one who set the earth in motion and withdrew, not the one to thank when those cherished do not die, for providence includes equally power to harm, not a God of exacting as if love could be earned or subtracted. But this may work in the night. Something that breathes with us as others sleep, something that breathes also on those sleeping, so no one is alone, something that is the beginning of love and also each part of how love is completed. Something so large, wherever we are not separate, which teaches again the way to start over. Night is the test, when grief lies uncovered and longing shows clear, when nothing we do can hasten earth's turning or delay it. This may be adequate for the night, this holding, something steadfastly breathes with us, which we also learn to breathe. A Theology Adequate for the Night by Nancy Schaffer. Beautiful. God for me is always present, as close as my breath, but it's not always visible, it's not always clear. But it does seem to draw me on, even though I only sometimes get a glimpse. I see the crescent, while others see the whole of the moon. I saw the crescent, you saw the whole of the moon, the whole of the moon, the whole of the moon. But sometimes you only need a glimpse of the crescent, and it draws you on yet again. Now, at the end of each day's session of Ministry in the Making, the planning group that is, we shared some devotional worship. And Aunt Howe, who is the tutor at Unitarian College, played a wonderful version of that great hymn, Nearer My God to Me, by a Mormon male voice choir. It was incredibly powerful and moving as the voices blended and joined in. It's a beautiful hymn, an absolute classic, written by the Unitarian, actually. Even though it's a classic hymn, it's written by a Unitarian, Sarah Flower Adams, in 1841. What a great name, by the way. I bet she knew John Relly Beard. It wouldn't be a surprise if she did. And the hymn depicts the story of Jacob's dream, sometimes called Jacob's ladder. And the hymn was reputably played by the band on the Titanic as the Titanic went down. Nearer thy God to me. So all this, as you can see, as no doubt you can imagine, it got my homiletic consciousness going. It's a minister's version of the spider sense, I think. It got me thinking about Advent. It got me thinking about that light of hope that draws us towards that moment of magic of Christmas, when the light of hope is born once more. A light that always draws me on despite life's very real struggles and the temptation of despair, that temptation that comes in those moments of the night in our lives. I may only get a glimpse of the crescent, but a glimpse is enough for me. I don't need to see the whole of the moon, and maybe that wouldn't be good anyway. Maybe it wouldn't draw me on to be of service to others. Maybe I'd just want it for myself. If I got more than a glimpse of the crescent, if someone gave me the whole of the moon. Today marks the beginning of Advent, a time for waiting, a time of preparation, a time set aside to wait for the coming of love in human form, symbolized in the birth of the Christ child. A promise of what love can become if we let it grow and nurture in our hearts and in our lives. For every new life is the gift of promise and possibility, I believe. A gift of possibility that can be reborn in each of our lives if we would allow it to be. That light of love is within us all, I believe, there in the moment of our birth, and can be relit at any moment. We need to bring it to life though, and maybe the crescent, the glimpse of the white-tailed deer is what draws us on to do so, to be of use in this world, to be of purpose, to bring meaning to not only our lives, but others too. The season of Advent invites us to embrace the spiritual discipline of waiting. We cannot rush through this season. We must experience it all before the moment of magic. We must first sing the carols, light the candles, open the door of our Advent calendars. We must first select our gifts for our loved ones, and we must prepare ourselves for the year to come. We must experience the whole of this season if we are to give birth to the love that is at the heart of it all. If we are to grow this love in the mangers of our own hearts and give birth to an experience and share it in this world, a world that needs love and hope as much as at any other time in our history. We always need it. Advent is a season of preparation and it can't be rushed. It requires patience. We cannot wish the days away. We cannot wish the winter away. We have to wait patiently, but that does not mean we wait passively. And there are times when the light seems dim like the white-tailed deer, but it draws us on in hope, and surely that's the message of this season. The light of hope is always shining, drawing us on. And that requires us to live in faith and hope, awaiting that birth of pure love, or that rebirth of pure love, in the mangers of all our hearts. For that light can shine bright, perhaps, one day. We may get a glimpse of the whole of the moon, who knows? For it's hope that draws us on. It's hope that keeps us going, especially in the cold and darkening days. As Seamus Heaney wrote, the days are getting shorter and colder. But I ask you to remember, even as the winter comes in, there is hope and there is light. And Advent is about believing in hope, in the possibility of hope, even though at times its light shines so dim. Hope is an imitation of the heart, to quote Vaclav Havel. If we choose hopelessness over hope, it says more about the state of our own hearts and souls than it does about the state of the world, actually. It's easy to become cynical and to despair, and hope speaks about what's going on in our own hearts, even if we only get a glimpse occasionally. Advent is about being lured toward the light of hope. It's about turning toward love and life and not turning away from life. It's about not being seduced by lazy cynicism. Put beautifully by the wonderful Victoria Safford in an interview with Krista Tippett I once heard on Being. I have one of her wonderful books of meditations, actually, used it many times, titled With or Without Candlelight. Reverend Victoria Safford serves the White Bear Unitarian Universalist Church in St. Paul, Minnesota, USA. And in that wonderful interview with Krista Tippett, she said many things, including the following. Our mission is to plant ourselves at the gates of hope, not the prudent gates of optimism, which are somewhat narrower, nor the stalwart, boring gates of common sense, nor the strident gates of self-righteousness, which creak on shrill and angry hinges, nor the cheerful, flimsy garden gate of everything's gonna be all right, but a very different, sometimes very lonely place, the place of truth-telling, about your own soul first of all and its condition, the place of resistance and defiance, the piece of ground from which you see the world both as it is and as it could be, as it might be, as it will be, the place from which you glimpse not only struggle, but joy in the struggle. And we stand there beckoning and calling, telling people what we are seeing, asking people what they see. Of all the virtues, hope is one of the most needed in our time. When people ask me How I stay hopeful in an era of widespread darkness, I answer simply: hope keeps me alive and creatively engaged with the world. And it keeps me alive too, and hopefully engaged and creatively engaged with the world. It draws me on beyond myself to live a life, to breathe life, to be a light of hope in this world, no matter how dark the night might be. Hope is an orientation of the spirit. It is something that holds us and sustains us right here and now. But it does more than that. It draws us on, even if at times the light seems dim. A bit like those white-tailed deer, or bright eyes, if you remember the song. Burning like fire, bright eyes suddenly turn so dim. How could a light that shines so brightly suddenly turn so dim? Bright eyes. Or maybe our eyes need to be that light to someone. The light shone in the darkness, and the darkness did not overcome it. Advent is a time for waiting, for preparation. In the Christian tradition, it is for the coming of the Christ child, the birth of hope. And for me, I see this birth in all of life, and not just physical life, and that birth can happen again and again and again. Think about all the great Christmas stories. It's about that love coming alive again. And the hope is to be born. It's to let it be born in the mangers of all of our hearts. That love can incarnate in all of our hearts if we live in and by that hope. Advent invites us to cradle our hopes like we would cradle a newborn child, to truly wonder what love might look like if we were truly to give birth to love, and what it truly might mean to live life faithfully, in love, through love, by love, despite the very real troubles that we all face. Advent is about waiting, but not doing so passively. The spiritual life is not passive, but it does require patience. It's about preparation, preparing for hope that may yet be born, maybe not even in our lifetimes, but we must prepare for it. Advent encourages us to be present and fully alive to this time of waiting. The time is now. The moment of magic is almost upon us. So we wait by being fully present to all that is alive around us, drawn on by this hope, through this hope, with this hope. Hope, an orientation of the heart, an orientation of the spirit. We live by it, through it, in it, with it. For soon comes the moment of magic, the birth of hope, and it must be born in the mangers of all our hearts, for our world needs it and depends upon it. Earlier, I made reference to Vaclav Havel and his view that hope is an orientation of the spirit. Havel was a writer and a statesman and the first president of the Czech Republic following the end of communism, the Velvet Revolution. He knew a lot about living by and through hope. And here's a wonderful poem, a piece on hope. It seems appropriate to end as we turn toward that moment of magic, drawn on by the light of hope, that white-tailed deer. So here's Hope by Vaclav Havel. Hope is a state of mind, not a state of the world. Either we have hope within us or we don't. Hope is not prognostication, it's an orientation of the spirit. You can't delegate that to anyone else. Hope is this deep and powerful sense. It's not the same as joy when things are going well, or the willingness to invest in enterprises that are obviously headed for early success, but rather an ability to work for something to succeed. Hope is definitely not the same as optimism. It's not the conviction that something will turn out well, but the certainty that something makes sense, regardless of how it turns out. It is hope above all that gives us strength to live and continually try new things, even in conditions that seem as hopeless as ours do here and now. In the face of this absurdity, life is too precious a thing to permit its devaluation by living pointlessly, emptily, without meaning, without love, and finally, without hope. O come, Emmanuel, and ransom captive Israel. Emmanuel means God is still with us, that light of hope, drawing us on and on and on. I'm going to end this devotion with some final words of blessing. You know, we can all bless, and we bless whenever we open our hearts to another and bless those around us with our loving presence to be that light of hope. The light of Christmas beckons, and we stumble toward it once again through doubt, distraction, and despair. Be with us on the journey, we pray. Spirit of Him who came and is to come, give us hope enough to hear the angels and help others to hear them too. And may we carry the light of that hope with us, and may we do so in all that we feel, in all that we think, in all that we say, in all that we do. May we give birth to the love present in all our hearts. O come, Emmanuel. Rejoice, rejoice, Emmanuel shall come to thee.